So I again welcome you to the introductory session on linguistics. We have been covering some certain topics since yesterday. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go through and very quickly do that. Go quickly through the topics that we have already covered so that your memory is also refreshed. And of course, because this is also a troubleshooting or problem solving session. So apart from Manvendra's question, if some other question comes to your mind, just hold it so that we can see how much area we have covered. Okay. So then we covered the properties of human language. We talked about Hockett's design features. We also talked about this small mnemonic formula, CAD square R square. We talked about types of linguistics, these various types. We talked about scope and branches of linguistics and how we move from the smallest towards the largest unit. We talked about language variation and language change. There were some terms that we had covered. You may see we talked about accent, registered. Dialect leveling is a thing that I think we may have missed. Okay. Prestige dialect, yes, we did talk about. Argot, jargon, slang. I think slang we did not talk about, right? Slang is the language of streets. Slang is the language that you do not find generally in popular mainstream lexicons. Slang is a kind of language that may or may not become mainstream. These words, sometimes they die their own slow death, and sometimes they enter into dictionaries. We talked about lingua franca, we talked about patois, pidgin, creole, and then acrolect, mesolect, and basilect, and superstratum, substratum, and adstratum. We talked about idiolect, dialect, sociolect, and how is idiolect very specific to persons. We talked about the maps and the lines that separate dialect areas, specifically in this case of the United States of America. We talked about various pidgins, English-based, that is, in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. We talked about the colonial history of the process of pidginization, and of course, how pidginization, pluralization, and standardization of language are related in the development stages of pidgins and creoles, and talked about the processes of creolization and de-creolization. We talked about English language, old, middle, and modern English, various changes in English language. Now we have come to the area of language change. So these, I repeat, are the types of broad types of language change. Logically speaking, starting from the smallest unit, sounds, phonological change, morphological at the level of words, syntactical at the level of how words come together, the rules that govern them, lexical at the level of how words and meanings go on together, and semantic, how some words, when they were applied in the beginning to a smaller area, the area of application increases. In narrowing, how the area of application decreases. In shifting, how it totally shifts. I think we'll talk a little bit more about this. And then, of course, we talked about great vowel shift, but I thought that this thing is very central to phonological language change. So I actually clicked an image of my section of notes and put it directly here. So let's talk about it before we go anywhere else. This is not a very important, centrally important topic. It has never been asked in 46, 47, and 50. It has never been asked. But because it is central to language change, so I thought to bring it here. Now, when we talk about Old English, Middle English, and Modern English, this great vowel shift occurred from between Middle English to Modern English. So, say from around 1400 to 1600, the the value of vowels inside the words that we even see today, like goat, like hope, like house, like mouse, like bake, like dame. These words, we know them, we know all of them. But they were not pronounced in Chaucer's time, for example, in the way they are pronounced today. So this great vowel shift is the shift in the way these vowels, the nucleus of these words, the vowels are pronounced now vis-a-vis the way they were pronounced back then in Chaucer's time. I'm saying Chaucer's time, but it's not exactly Chaucer's time. It is a bit fluid, from 1400 to 1600. So it is around the year 1500 plus minus 100 years. But because we remember Middle English with Chaucer's name, therefore I'm mentioning Chaucer's name, it will be easier to remember. But it's better if we remember 1500 plus minus 100. The final congealing of the shape of the vowels happened even after 1600s, but approximately 1600. So, for example, in the word dame, the diphthong a; in the word mouse, the diphthong ow; in the word mice, the diphthong I. These are the modern English variants. In the Middle English, for example, bake or make, it was pronounced like the French people pronounce it even today, dame or marque. I repeat, dame, the final E was pronounced, and marque. But we're not concerned with E, we're concerned with A sound. So, A, it was an open A. The Middle English had 7 long vowels. Okay. Now, some of them have been lost today, but A sound is still there. When we come to the vowels, we'll talk about them. But at present, we're talking about A, which exists in French and Spanish too. At present, even today, it exists. So, A was diphthongized. It was converted into A sound. So, Bak and Dama or Mak became dame or make or bake. Similarly, Musa or Lusa, the U sound, became mouse and louse. And Misa or Lisa became mice, mice and lice. So it catches you. So A, U, and E, the long vowels, they become A, OW, and I when we go through the great vowel shift. So this is called the process of diphthongization. The long vowels, they become diphthongs. And of course, the lower vowels, which are not shown in this image, lower vowels, they go higher up. The vowels are heightened, which is also part of the great vowel shift. Okay, but at present we are going towards the 7 long Middle English vowels. This is a bit too much, we don't need this much of detail, but I thought let's not take chances with UPHESC. So their vowels were very close to our present Hindi vowels. So I have even written roughly the Hindi equivalents. So if we begin towards the bottom from the open vowel side, we've got A, our very old friend. When we go upwards, we got O, we got O, and we got U. And when we go towards the front, we've got we've got A, and we've got E. So these are the Middle English vowels. They don't exist all of them in IPA. These are the Middle English vowels. So for example, goat of today, the O sound, it used to be go, then it became go, then became goat, as it is pronounced even today in American pronunciation, goat, and in British pronunciation, goat. So because we are from the Commonwealth, we generally follow the British pronunciation or the RP, so goat. Similarly, in the case of house and mouse, it began with hose, then whose, then how, house, and then house. So this is the way longer vowels were diphthongized. Okay, and then we will talk later about the vowels going higher up in the mouth. These two things happened. Okay, diphthongization and vowels going higher up. If you're confused about this process of diphthongization, please tell me. If you're confused about 7 long Middle English vowels, don't go very deep into that. Just remember the number 7. that I think is enough. They will not draw the diagram and drag you down towards the detailed discussion of 7 long Middle English vowels. Okay, so remember the number 7. Also remember the process of diphthongization and the time span 1400 to 1600, and I think you are okay. Okay. Now I'm going a little back. I will talk a little bit about types of language change. So phonological language change, as you can see from the prefix phone or phonos, is change in the sounds. We were talking about the great vowel shift. We yesterday talked about Grimm's law and Werner's law. These all things will be covered under phonological language change, the change in the sound. Morphological language change will be the change in the morphemes or change in words themselves. Syntactic language change will be the change in the way words come together. I'll give an example to you. In Sanskrit, we have got vibhaktis. You know, nouns and pronouns, they are conjugated. Prathama, Dvitiya, Tritiya, and so on and so forth. Cases, vibhakti. Now, in Old English and in Indo-European, of which Sanskrit is a part. So in Indo-European language and in Old English also, there were a lot of case endings. Now these case endings were leveled or removed. For example, you've got forms of pronouns, all right, but then we don't have case endings in case of nouns. So this is what happened, morphologically speaking. Forms of words, they were lost. And instead, a couple of inflections that remained, for example, SES for pluralization or apostrophe S for possessive. These are the cases that give us traces of the original inflections of the words, but then they have been lost. Then when we talk about syntactic, you may remember the first 2 lines of, because Chaucer is very famous. So prologue to the Canterbury Tales, when in April the Shurus Suta. So you see the word Shurus Suta, showers, sweet. Shurus is showers and Suta is sweet. Now showers, sweet is not the way we use these words today. We use sweet showers. Adjective comes before showers, noun. But in Chaucer's time, it was noun, shurus, before suta, sweet. So that is syntactic language change. Then we'll go towards lexical language change. It includes n number of possibilities. We talked about them, clipping, abbreviation, blending, borrowing, and so on and so forth. So these things are covered under lexical changes. Semantic change will be when the same word is its range of meaning either is broadened or narrowed or shifted. I did mention yesterday, in fact, I asked you, if I remember, about narrowing, but no problem. So for example, we've got the very famous word villain. So that is an example of semantic shifting, villain. So villain was a person who used to work in a feudal villa. So from villa came villain, a person who works in a villa for a noble, for a lord. From villain came the connotation that this person is filthy, this person is ugly, this person is low-born. And from that, you can see the shift from low-born to evil, villain. So although the word remained villain, its meaning shifted. So that's villain. In case of broadening, for example, we all work with mouse, the mouse that I'm working with. Now you all totally know what a mouse used to be 100 years ago even. That is an animal. But with the introduction of this new thing and application of this term, and I totally do not know what is the story behind this specific tool being called a mouse. There must be a very interesting story in the etymology and application of expansion of the same thing. So if you come to know about some such story, do share it with us. But at present, a mouse. So the word mouse was applied upon an animal, a specific thing, from where it also expanded the range of application, and now it is also applied upon another thing. So mouse, the animal was retained, and mouse, the tool or the peripheral of computer, is something new that we have. Similarly, we have got net, which is a clipping of internet, but then is metaphorical about how we are connected with the whole world with this web-like structure. So this is called broadening. The primary meaning, sorry, not the primary meaning, the initial meaning remains, but new sets of semantic fields are added to that. From there, we come to narrow. Quarantine had been, uh, sorry, in broadening, quarantine had been very used in during the Corona times. Now, quarantine, it comes from 40, quaranta, and 40 was actually 40 days. In the beginning, the separation of 40 days for the people who were suspected of some kind of infection or disease were quarantined. So that was exactly 40 days. But then by semantic broadening, any such kind of separation, any number of days, not 40, is now called quarantine. That's also an example of broadening. Now we come to narrowing. In German language, even today, a dog is called Hund. Okay, so hound was the name for dogs, but today it is the name for a specific breed of hunting dogs. Similarly, meat, M-E-A-T, meat. Meat was a name for any kind of food in the beginning. In the Bible, even in a couple of poems of W.B. Yeats, you will see that meat has been used as equivalent to food, FWD, food of any kind. But today it means carnivorous food, or omnivorous food. So this is called narrowing. Grimm's law we talked about yesterday. In Proto-Indo-European, cognates bha, dha, gha, ba, da, ga, and pa, ta, ka are converted into Proto-Germanic ba, da, ga, pa, ta, ka, and fa, tha, ka. It began with Pitri, Matri, and Bhatri, where Pitri is converted into father. Pa becomes fa. So you see, Pitri becomes fa, the, in which the accented pa part becomes fa. And then you've got ped or pedis or pad, where again pa becomes fa. So if you see the diagram here, pa up there, Proto-Indo-European, and fa down there, Proto-Germanic. These kind of patterns were seen by people who knew a couple of languages other than their mother tongue, in this case, other than German for Grimm. And he observed that when we look at Sanskrit, Latin, and German and English languages, there are some certain patterns that emerged. It was not random, and it was following some kind of rule, behaving in that kind of manner, which was the origin of comparative linguistics and the origin of neo-grammarian school. That was the scientific way of looking at language families, working backwards to finally reach ancestral proto-languages. So Grimm's law is about these specific sounds being converted from Proto-Indo-European to Proto-Germanic into some other kind of sounds. It would be better if you remember Bhadaga, Badaga, Pataka, and then converted into Badaga, Pataka, for Tha, Kha, or Ha. And then we'll talk about genetic classification or language families. You may already know about Indo-European languages. We talked about Proto-Indo-European, from which Indo-European was born. Now, Indo-European languages are spoken by nearly half the population of the world. If you look at the globe, wherever Spanish, French, Portuguese, English is spoken, they're all parts of the Indo-European family. Then you've got the family which has got the largest number of languages. That is the Niger-Congo family, the Niger-Congo languages. Indo-European languages are only around 500 or 600 in number, but the Niger-Congo family is 3 times that number, around 16, 1700 languages. So these are 2 big families. First, big in coverage of area. Second, big in the number of languages that it has. If you want to know more about this, you can search and find it. but such questions have not been asked in UPHSC. It's very interesting field, but I'm just saying that such questions have not been asked in UPHSC, therefore I'm not going deeper into this. But if you're interested, you can always check more about these families. And same goes for the language family tree. Uh, this is a very small section of the language family tree. There are many other families, but because we belong to Hindi speaking belt and because we are studying English, therefore I have only cut this much, the Proto-Indo-European part, and put it here. So as you can see from Proto-Indo-European part, there were branches: Italic, Hellenic, Albanian, Germanic, Indo-Iranian, Celtic, Armenian, Balto-Slavic, and from Indo-Iranian, we come towards Hindi. From Germanic, we come towards modern English. From Italic, it branches, and we get to reach Italian, Spanish, and French. Now, this is also a very, very interesting area. And I think that you should go a little bit deeper here. There are chances of they're asking questions from here, although it has never been asked. Fine. You need exposure to language families. Now, in synchronous linguistics, language families are not so very important. They were important in diachronous or historical linguistics, but still, it's a vast field and it had its sway for a very long time. And we still do talk about Proto-Indo-European and how Latin, Sanskrit, and English, they are related. So, a cursory glance at least is required. This is expansion of the Indo-Aryan family. So from Indo-Iranian, two branches, Iranian and Indo-Aryan. You can see down there Iranian. I have not covered that. And from Indo-Aryan, then you get this branching that gives you nearly all Indian languages. So thank you. Now we will take up questions. The first question is paradigmatic relationship by Manavendra. I think Anuj talked about it yesterday. In grammatical or linguistic terms, paradigm is different. In scientific terms, paradigm is different. So if you want to reduce confusion with paradigmatic, forget about paradigm shift and word paradigm in science. Erase it. Just remember that paradigm is a set of words that are related in a way that they can replace one another in a sentence. I repeat, paradigm is a set of words that can replace one another in a sentence. So you may say that they are mutually exclusive. For example, in case of noun, a cat sat on a mat. Okay, a cat sat on a mat. Now, a cat sat on a mat. They are syntagmatically related. So you say horizontal relationship. That is syntagmatic relationship. But when we substitute cat with rat or dog, another noun of that type, which doesn't challenge the interpretation of meaning also. Although you may make an ungrammatical or unsemantic sentence, okay, an unsemantic sentence will still be called valid. So you may say that a mobile phone sat upon a mat. It will be meaningless, but still you are substituting noun with noun. But it is not paradigmatic because in language, we don't make such kind of sentences. We make sentences like cat sat, rat sat, or dog sat, or man sat upon a mat. And then all these common nouns will be in paradigmatic relationship with one another. So Manavendra, I hope it was clear to you. Others, because this is a troubleshoot session, so the topics that we have covered, other than the great vowel shift, anything that you want to ask, you may ask, because the great vowel shift, I think it will take 5 to 10 more minutes. So we'll cover it in next class. Do remind me. At present, from whatever we have done, you can ask or you can discuss. It's not that this is the last chance. You can keep your questions and we can discuss later also. But if something is troubling you, you do ask. If something regarding this lecture or subject is not troubling you, but something regarding the mechanism of how we are going to go ahead is troubling you, or if you want to ask something more about the course, please do ask. I will stop sharing here, and I will also stop recording here.